The morning sun poured through the tall cathedral windows, illuminating the intricate patterns of stained glass, casting colorful reflections onto the marble floors. Guests were arriving, dressed in their finest attire, and the air was filled with a mixture of excitement, anticipation, and the subtle tension that accompanies the promise of a lifelong commitment. She stood in her room, adjusting her wedding dress, her fingers trembling slightly, not from nerves about the ceremony, but from the heavy weight of emotions swirling inside her. From the window, she could see the rows of chairs neatly aligned for the guests, the flowers arranged with meticulous precision, and the orchestra tuning their instruments. Everything was perfect, or at least it seemed perfect on the surface. Yet beneath the calm exterior, there was a storm of unresolved feelings. Memories of the man who had loved her most haunted her thoughts, whispering in the corners of her mind. He had been there from the very beginning, supporting her, protecting her, loving her in a way that no one else had. And now, as she prepared to walk down the aisle toward another man, she could not help but feel a pang of guilt and confusion. Her bridesmaids fussed over her, adjusting her veil, ensuring that every fold of her gown was flawless. She smiled politely, thanking them, but her mind kept drifting back to him. Would he come today? Would he try to stop the wedding, or would he finally accept that she had made a choice? The questions gnawed at her, but she had rehearsed her smile, her responses, and her composure countless times. Today, the world would see her as the radiant bride who had it all together, but inside, her heart raced with anticipation and dread. Outside, the guests were settling in. Conversations buzzed softly, laughter echoing through the corridors. Her fiancé, handsome and impeccably dressed, waited at the altar, surrounded by groomsmen who tried to hide their nervous smiles. He was confident, charming, and clearly in love, but there was a tension in his shoulders, a subtle awareness that the bride's heart might not be fully his. He had sensed it for months, even before the invitations were sent, but he had chosen to trust her. Trust, however, could only stretch so far when emotions ran this deep. She took a deep breath, the scent of fresh roses filling the air. The door opened, and the organ began its familiar strains, signaling the start of the ceremony. Guests turned, smiles brightening the room, as all eyes fell upon her. She walked down the aisle, every step measured, graceful, and elegant. Yet her gaze instinctively searched the crowd. And then she saw him, standing near the back, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her knees feel unsteady. He was the man who had loved her most, the one who had always been there. And at that very moment, everything else, the photographer, the flowers, the smiling guests, faded into insignificance. Her heart pounded, and for a fraction of a second, she froze. The bridal train shifted beneath her as the fabric brushed against the polished floor. Her fingers tightened around the bouquet. Could she continue? The whispers of the past surged forward. The stolen glances, the late-night conversations, the promises he had made when no one else was watching. He had never asked for her hand, never demanded, never pressured. Yet the love in his eyes spoke louder than any words ever could. And then it happened. A sudden movement, a flurry of red roses thrown through the air. The petals landed on her pristine white gown, marking it with a stark, almost violent contrast. She gasped, the sound muffled by the gasp of the crowd. Gasps and whispers spread throughout the cathedral. Her fiancé's eyes widened, shock and anger flashing in his expression. And through it all, the man who had loved her most knelt at her feet, tears streaming down his face, holding nothing but the raw emotion of a love too long suppressed. The room was silent, the tension palpable, as everyone waited to see what she would do. Would she continue toward the altar, her heart torn, or would she stop, finally acknowledging the man who had been her constant, her confidant, her greatest love? Time seemed to slow, and the weight of countless decisions pressed upon her. Every step forward was a battle between duty, expectation, and the undeniable truth of her heart. She stood there, frozen, as the petals clung to the delicate fabric of her dress. Every eye in the cathedral bore down on her, yet all she could see was him, the man who had loved her most. His voice trembled when he finally spoke, barely audible over the collective gasp of the audience. "I cannot let her do this," he said, his words charged with desperation and truth. "You don't know what she means to me. You don't know what we've shared." Her fiancé's jaw tightened, his hand reaching instinctively for hers, as if to anchor her to the life they had promised each other. "Stop this now," he said firmly, trying to regain control of the situation. "This is inappropriate. Please stand with me." But the bride could not move. She felt a deep, visceral pull toward him, a force that no words or promises could diminish. Her mind raced through memories of laughter, of comfort, of unspoken understanding that had been the foundation of her heart for years. She had tried to bury these feelings, convince herself that they were irrelevant, that the life she was building now was enough. But the truth was undeniable. He had been her first thought in the morning, her last thought at night, the silent constant in every triumph and tragedy she had faced. The congregation murmured, some shifting uncomfortably, others watching with fascination. The priest, usually composed and calm, seemed unsure how to proceed, his hands hovering uncertainly over the sacred texts. The atmosphere was electric, a fragile tension between decorum and raw emotion. She glanced at him, her knees trembling beneath the weight of indecision. He rose to his full height, eyes never leaving hers, and spoke again, softer this time. "I have loved you every day, in ways no one else could. I never asked for your hand, because I knew your path might lead elsewhere. But today, I cannot stand aside. Not anymore." Tears welled in her eyes as she struggled to breathe. Every step forward felt like a betrayal. Every pause felt like an eternity. She looked toward her fiancé, his hand still extended, waiting for her, and then back at the man kneeling before her. The heart wants what it wants, the saying goes, and hers had never wavered, even when logic, responsibility, and expectation demanded otherwise. And then she made a decision that would alter the course of all their lives forever. With a trembling hand, she reached down, lifting the red-stained petals from her dress, and turned toward the man who had loved her most. Every eye followed, every breath held, every heart pounding in anticipation. The wedding, the ceremony, the vows, all of it had become secondary to the raw, undeniable truth of love. She had chosen, and in that moment, the world seemed to pause, waiting for the inevitable collision of hearts, for the ultimate act of courage and honesty in the face of expectation, decorum, and tradition. The cathedral was silent except for the soft shuffle of footsteps and the occasional stifled gasp. She stood, frozen for a moment, her fingers brushing against the red petals that marked her dress, a symbol of love, defiance, and truth all at once. Every eye was on her, every soul in that room suspended between shock and curiosity. She knew that what she was about to do would shock them further, but she could no longer suppress the truth buried in her heart for so long. The man who had loved her most slowly rose to his feet, his eyes, deep and unwavering, locked with hers. He stepped closer, but never crossed the invisible boundary of decorum. There was no aggression in his movement, only vulnerability and sincerity that seemed to illuminate the entire cathedral. The silence pressed heavily, the tension almost tangible, as he took a deep breath and spoke in a voice that resonated with raw emotion. "I have loved you since the first day we met," he said, his gaze never faltering. "I have watched you grow, struggle, and triumph. I have kept my distance because I respected your choices, but today, I cannot stand aside any longer. I need the world to know that my love for you has never wavered." Her heart raced, pounding so loudly it felt as though the walls of the cathedral would shake. Every memory of him came rushing back, the quiet moments they shared when no one else was watching, the laughter, the tears, the promises made in hushed whispers. She had always known he was special, different from anyone else. And now, as the world watched, he had bared his soul in a way that left her breathless. Her fiancé, standing at the altar, struggled to maintain his composure. His confident facade faltered, revealing the doubt and hurt that had been simmering beneath the surface for months. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. His hands trembled slightly as he realized that the woman he loved, or thought he did, was caught between two worlds, two hearts, and an impossible choice. The bride's hands shook as she clutched her bouquet. She had rehearsed this moment countless times, but nothing could have prepared her for the intensity of seeing him stand there, the man who had loved her most, offering his heart without reservation. She wanted to speak, to explain, but her voice faltered. Tears streamed down her cheeks, glistening in the soft light that filtered through the stained glass. The congregation watched, their breaths held, as the drama unfolded in real time. Finally, she found her voice. I never stopped loving you," she admitted, her words trembling with emotion. "I tried to move on, to build a life I thought I wanted, but every step I took, every smile I faked, I felt your absence. I can't ignore what my heart truly feels." A collective gasp filled the cathedral. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some sympathetic, some scandalized. The priest, who had been carefully monitoring decorum, paused, unsure how to proceed. The vows, the carefully scripted ceremony, the centuries-old traditions, they all seemed irrelevant in the face of such raw honesty. Her fiancé's expression darkened with a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. He stepped forward, his voice sharp but laced with hurt. "Are you telling me that everything we've planned, everything we've shared, it meant nothing?" She shook her head, tears flowing freely now. "It wasn't nothing. You are wonderful, kind, and loving, but my heart belongs to him. It always has." The man who had loved her most took a cautious step closer. "Then let me be the one to make you happy," he whispered. "Let me be the one who stands by your side, not out of obligation, but out of love." The bride's knees weakened, and she sank slightly, the weight of the decision almost too much to bear. The audience could see the conflict etched into her every feature, the battle between loyalty, expectation, and the undeniable truth of her heart. Her fiancé reached out desperate, but she gently pulled away, signaling that her choice had been made. And then, with a deep breath, she turned fully toward the man who had loved her most. The cathedral seemed to exhale, the tension breaking into a mix of relief, astonishment, and awe. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and for the first time, allowed herself to embrace the man who had always been her anchor. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some clapping, some whispering, some stunned into silence. Yet amidst the chaos, there was a sense of profound honesty and authenticity that resonated far beyond the walls of the cathedral. Two hearts, long bound by unspoken truths, had finally acknowledged their connection in the most public and undeniable way. The aftermath was immediate and electric. Cameras flashed, phones recorded, and whispers filled the air like wildfire. Guests who had arrived expecting a traditional wedding were now witnesses to a story far more compelling, a story of love, courage, and vulnerability that transcended societal expectations. Some stared in disbelief, others in admiration, but all felt the weight of what had just transpired. Her fiancé, still standing at the altar, looked like a man grappling with the collapse of his carefully constructed reality. He had planned this wedding meticulously, visualized it countless times, and now it was unraveling before his eyes. Rage, heartbreak, and disbelief warred across his features, leaving him momentarily frozen. Meanwhile, she and the man who had loved her most stood together, hands entwined, hearts racing. There was no need for rehearsed vows, no need for scripted promises. Every word they had ever spoken, every glance, every shared moment, had already built the foundation for a lifetime of commitment. In the intensity of the moment, they felt a profound liberation. They were no longer hiding, no longer pretending, and no longer bound by fear. Yet, even in that release, the consequences of truth were undeniable. The bride's family whispered nervously among themselves, shocked and scandalized by the abrupt shift in plans. Friends exchanged uncomfortable glances, unsure whether to offer support or retreat into judgment. The audience, composed of strangers and acquaintances, was split between admiration for the courage displayed and disapproval of the disruption. The bride, sensing the swirl of emotions, raised a hand to calm the murmurs. "I know this is unexpected," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "But today I chose honesty. I chose love that is real, not convenient or forced. I chose the man who has always been my heart, my home, and my truth." Her words hung in the air, resonating through the cathedral with a weight that was impossible to ignore. The man who had loved her most smiled, tears glistening in his eyes, and gently kissed her hand. "We will face the world together," he said softly, a promise that needed no ceremony to be binding. As the crowd began to settle, the priest approached cautiously. He was a man of faith and tradition, yet even he recognized the undeniable power of love expressed so openly. "If you both wish to proceed," he said quietly, "then may you be blessed in your journey together." The bride and her true love exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. The formalities of a traditional wedding had been abandoned, replaced by a raw and authentic celebration of emotion. The guests, slowly coming to terms with the upheaval, began to applaud, some hesitantly, others with genuine enthusiasm, acknowledging the bravery it took to follow the heart without compromise. But the story was far from over. Outside the cathedral, the media had begun to gather, sensing a story that would captivate the world. Social media posts went viral within minutes, videos and photos shared with commentary ranging from admiration to scandal. The bride and her true love faced not only personal consequences, but public scrutiny as well, a reality they would have to navigate together. Inside, however, all that mattered was the quiet, profound connection between two souls who had finally found their way back to each other. They walked hand in hand down the aisle, not as bride and groom in a conventional sense, but as two hearts that had refused to deny the truth. Every step was a statement, every glance a reaffirmation of a love that had survived distance, doubt, and the pressure of expectations. The next morning, the media storm was relentless. Videos of her walking away from the altar, hand in hand with the man who had loved her most, had gone viral. Headlines ranged from "Bride leaves groom at the altar" to "Epic love story captures hearts worldwide." Public opinion was split, but the story resonated deeply. People everywhere admired the courage it took to defy societal expectations and choose true love. As she scrolled through the endless posts, she realized that the narrative was no longer just hers. It had become a symbol, proof that following the heart could inspire millions. Messages poured in from strangers, sharing stories of their own struggles, regrets, and dreams. Many thanked her for showing that it was possible to break free from fear and embrace authenticity. Yet not all reactions were kind. Critics attacked her, calling her reckless and selfish. Some questioned her morals, while others condemned the disruption to a traditional ceremony. The negative comments stung, but she remembered the night on the balcony and the strength in the eyes of the man who loved her most. Their love, she realized, was stronger than any judgment, any scrutiny, any societal expectation. Meanwhile, her former fiancé retreated into a private world of reflection and sorrow. The plans he had meticulously built had collapsed, leaving him grappling with disappointment and loss. But as he watched from a distance, he slowly began to understand the depth of a love that had drawn her away, not out of malice, but out of authenticity. The man who had loved her most became her anchor, guiding her through every challenge, every confrontation, every public debate. Together, they navigated interviews, press conferences, and the viral onslaught with dignity and grace. Each encounter was a test of their resolve, but each time they emerged stronger, more united, and more certain of their shared future. Their journey inspired people in ways they could never have anticipated. Invitations poured in for talks, interviews, and features on platforms that celebrated courage and love. They began sharing their story widely, not for fame or recognition, but to encourage others to honor their hearts and embrace vulnerability. The ripple effect was undeniable. People everywhere were talking, reflecting, and in some cases, daring to act on their own suppressed truths. Amidst the public storm, their private world grew richer. They traveled, explored new ventures, and built a life full of love, laughter, and purpose. Yet the memory of that day at the cathedral remained vivid, a reminder that the most pivotal moments in life often come unannounced, wrapped in chaos and tension, demanding honesty and bravery. The couple learned that love, when true and unwavering, could withstand public scrutiny, family expectations, and societal norms. It was resilient, patient, and powerful beyond measure. They had defied the odds, choosing connection over convenience, passion over pretense, and authenticity over fear. And in doing so, they had inspired a world hungry for stories that were real, emotional, and transformative. Weeks had passed since that unforgettable day at the cathedral, yet the memory of the stained wedding dress and the stunned gasps of the crowd lingered like shadows. But the woman had changed, no longer constrained by obligation, no longer drowning in doubt. The man who loved her most had become her anchor, a constant presence in the chaos of a world that refused to let her private life remain private. They spent mornings in quiet reflection, watching the sunrise spill gold across the horizon. It was in those moments that they healed, not from the public scandal, but from the years of suppression and hesitation that had shaped her life. Each conversation, each gentle gesture, was a thread weaving them closer together. She realized that love wasn't merely romantic, it was sustaining, transformative, and grounding. Yet, even as they nurtured their newfound happiness, the world's judgment loomed. Social media remained a battlefield, with viral posts dissecting every choice she had made. Some praised her bravery, while others attacked her morality. The former fiancé had also made his presence known, issuing carefully worded statements about his heartbreak and disappointment. But amidst it all, she discovered a remarkable truth: the power of owning one's story. She began writing a blog, first private, then public, about her experiences, the choices she had made, and the lessons she had learned. Her words resonated, drawing readers from across the globe. Messages poured in, sharing stories of suppressed love, missed opportunities, and hidden courage. Some wrote about relationships they had abandoned for convenience, others about dreams they had forsaken for fear. Each message strengthened her resolve, confirming that her choice had ignited more than just her own life. It had inspired others to confront their fears. The man who loved her most was her constant editor, confidant, and cheerleader. "Your story is powerful," he told her one evening, as they sat by the fire with her laptop between them. "It's raw, honest, and real. People don't just read your words, they feel them. You're giving them courage." His eyes, reflecting both pride and love, reminded her why she had chosen him over convention, over comfort, over everything she thought she should be. They began meeting other couples, people who had defied norms, and mentors who had embraced unconventional paths. These gatherings became a sanctuary, a network of authenticity, where stories of heartbreak, resilience, and unexpected joy were celebrated rather than judged. The woman marveled at how quickly these connections expanded, creating a community that thrived on honesty and vulnerability. Even her family, initially shocked and hurt, began to soften. Conversations once filled with tension evolved into understanding. They realized that her happiness was not just about rebellion, but about authenticity, a lesson that touched them more deeply than any societal expectation ever could. Slowly, trust was rebuilt, but it was grounded now in respect, not obligation. Professionally, she made bold moves as well. She launched initiatives to support people struggling with personal dilemmas, combining her entrepreneurial skills with her desire to inspire others. Each project, whether a mentorship program or a storytelling workshop, became a testament to the transformative power of love and courage. The man who loved her most stood beside her at every step, his presence a constant affirmation of shared vision and unwavering support. Yet, despite the growth and success, moments of doubt occasionally surfaced. Memories of the cathedral, the shocked faces, and the whispered judgments haunted her. But each time, she confronted them head-on, reminding herself of the courage it took to step forward. Each day became a conscious act of affirmation, of choosing love over fear, authenticity over pretense. Through it all, their relationship deepened. Conversations once surface level evolved into profound exchanges about purpose, identity, and legacy. They celebrated victories, comforted each other in setbacks, and allowed themselves to dream without restraint. They learned that true love was not just about passion, it was about understanding, patience, and the willingness to face the world together, unflinching and united. Months turned into a year, and the echoes of that scandalous wedding day had transformed into a story of triumph. The woman no longer feared judgment, having realized that public opinion was transient, while love and truth endured. She and the man who had loved her most had created a sanctuary, a life built not on appearances, but on integrity, compassion, and shared vision. Their journey became widely recognized, celebrated as an inspiring tale of bravery and authentic love. Documentaries, podcasts, and articles shared their story, highlighting the courage it took to break free from societal expectations. Yet, through all the recognition, the couple remained grounded, refusing to let fame dictate the terms of their relationship. Their bond was personal, sacred, and unshakable. They revisited the cathedral months later, not to relive the scandal, but to reflect on how far they had come. Standing there, she noticed the emptiness of the pews without the weight of judgment and expectation. The air felt lighter, filled now with the memory of courage and choice rather than scrutiny. She whispered a quiet thanks to herself for having the bravery to listen to her heart. Life continued, filled with ordinary joys and extraordinary moments. They traveled, explored hidden corners of the world, and shared their experiences openly. Every trip, every encounter, was infused with the understanding that love was not just a destination, but the journey itself. The ripple effect of their story continued to grow. People reached out with stories of reconciliation, forgiveness, and rediscovery. Some reconnected with long-lost loves. Others pursued passions they had abandoned. Their example proved that when one person acts with courage, it can spark a chain reaction of transformation. Meanwhile, her former fiancé, having spent months in introspection, found a measure of peace. Though he had not been the one to walk away with her, he realized that life's lessons were rarely straightforward. He learned to let go, to accept the outcomes of love, and to embrace his own path forward. At home, the couple built a life filled with warmth and joy. Friends gathered often, sharing laughter and stories, creating a community that celebrated love in all its forms. They continued their philanthropic work, helping others face difficult choices and inspiring courage in those who felt trapped by convention. One quiet evening, as the sun set over the horizon, the woman reflected on the journey from fear to freedom. She had once walked down an aisle with hesitation, held back by 1,000 unspoken fears. Today, she walked through life with confidence, guided by love and authenticity. The man who had loved her most stood beside her, his hand in hers, his eyes reflecting the unspoken promise that together they could face anything. She realized that the true victory was not the story shared by the world, but the life they had created, an existence defined by courage, honesty, and unwavering love. The stains on her dress, the whispers of scandal, and the shocked faces had all become symbols of transformation. They reminded her that the most beautiful stories are often forged in moments of conflict, courage, and truth. As night fell, they sat on the balcony, watching stars emerge one by one. "We did it," she whispered, a smile touching her lips. "We did," he replied, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "And this is only the beginning." In the end, it was not the grand gestures, the public drama, or the viral headlines that defined their story. It was the quiet moments of understanding, the courage to embrace truth, and the unwavering commitment to each other. Love had won, not in the way anyone expected, but in the only way that truly mattered: authentically, fiercely, and unconditionally. And as the stars shone above, the woman knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and the man who loved her most would face them together, heart to heart, hand in hand, with a quiet triumph of love as their guide.